Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, tied up, disoriented, and watching helplessly as your partner is taken in front of you. You survive the trauma only to find that the people meant to help you, the police, accuse you of making the whole thing up. Welcome to That's My Opinion, where we deep dive into the stories and topics everyone is talking about, but with a fresh perspective. And today, well, it's not that I hope that you were having a bad day, but if you're having a good day, I promise you, I'm about to ruin it. We're discussing American Nightmare, the 3-part documentary on Netflix about Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn. And grab a snack and grab your pearls because, girl, this is something. I'm Bacon Bears, and if you like what you see here today, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started. It's March of 2015, and Aaron Quinn and Denise Huskins are having a night in just like any other night. They go to bed, and they wake up to a blinding, bright light in their face. They can't see anything. They're disoriented. They can hear what they think is a stun gun or a taser. They can see laser beams, and they notice that there's multiple people in their room. And one of the perpetrators says, "Lie down on the bed." But when he goes to confront Aaron Quinn, he says, "Aaron, lie face down on the bed." They bind Aaron with zip ties and cover his eyes with what seems to be like swim goggles that were blacked out. They put him in a closet with headphones that has calming music and a previously recorded message. And the message said that this break-in was being performed by a professional group to collect financial debts and that both victims would be hurt if they didn't comply. And then one of the perpetrators took Aaron, led him out to the living room onto the couch and put him there and said, "You are not allowed to free yourself. You are being watched by cameras." And Aaron is just disoriented and cold. And he's like, "Can I at least get a blanket?" And the perpetrator says, "Oh, yeah, I didn't even realize how cold it was in here because I'm wearing a wetsuit." And then Aaron passes out. He was disoriented. He was groggy. They had given him something to sedate him. And the next morning, when Aaron wakes up, he, in fact, frees himself. And the first thing that he notices is Denise is nowhere to be found. His car is also missing, and so is his laptop. He then finds both him and Denise's phone, and his phone actually has a voicemail on it with financial demands. And as he's sitting on the couch, he can see that there is like red tape around the carpet and making like a boundary of where he's not supposed to go. He's supposed to stay within that tape. And then when he looks up into the corner of his room, he can see that there's a surveillance camera looking at him. But Aaron calls 911 anyways. The police come down to the house. They start looking around. They are talking to Aaron, who is still super disoriented by the sedative, which Aaron says he thought that they gave him maybe NyQuil or diazepam. And they decide that they would take him down to the Vallejo police department. While Aaron's down at the police department, they end up taking his clothes. They take a mouth swab and they start interviewing him immediately because they need to find out as much as they can so that they can try to find Denise. And that's when we meet Detective Matt Mustard. He's the one that's going to come in. He's going to talk to Aaron, and they're going to try to find Denise as soon as possible. And Aaron tells him everything: swim goggles, zip ties, lasers, tasers, headphones, drugs, stolen girlfriend, stolen car. He also, though, tells police that one of the kidnappers let him know that there was an issue. And that issue was that Denise was not the intended target. The intended target was a woman named Andrea. Who's Andrea, you may ask? Well, Andrea is Aaron's ex-fiancée who lived in that house only months prior to this incident. But kidnappers being kidnappers do what they do, and they took Denise anyways, and they demanded $15,000 for her. So the police need to immediately figure out who Denise Huskins is, so they call her parents. Jane, who is her mom, and Mike Huskins, who is Denise's dad. We find out that Denise is a beautiful 30-something-year-old woman who's full of life. She's a physical therapist. And we find out that the parents don't know much about Aaron. This relationship was relatively new, and they had no idea who Aaron was. They just knew that Denise was seeing somebody. And because they are so limited on time and trying to find out where Denise is, the police decide that they're going to hold a press conference. Lieutenant Kenny Park said that they are doing everything that they could to find Denise, who was taken against her will the night before. And the story hits the news so fast. They start searching immediately. Boats, dogs, sonar, and more than 100 trained personnel to go out and just look for her. And while that's all happening, they still have Aaron down at the police department and they're asking him absolutely everything that they possibly can. The police then find out that there's no forced entry. Denise was taken in the middle of the night. Aaron didn't call until 11:30 a.m. They asked him for $15,000, which Aaron does not have. I mean, in this economy, who does? And he even tries to get an advance from his bank, but his bank's like, listen, we can only forward you $3,500. So he tells the kidnapper that, and then they ghost him. Now, statistically speaking, most abductions are not stranger related, especially not in Vallejo, California. This is a nice, safe, beautiful family community. And Detective Matt Mustard says, unknown people wearing wetsuits broke into your house and kidnapped her. And Aaron's like, yes. And at this point, Aaron's parents are like, we need to go to the Vallejo Police Department. We have to help our son. And they drive all the way down there and they get there and they're like, you can't see Aaron because he's being interrogated. Why don't you guys come into this room? And they start asking Aaron's parents about Aaron. They said that Aaron was an easy kid to raise. He was captain of the football team. He's a good boy. He works at a hospital as a physical therapist. They met Denise and she's wonderful. But as the police dig deeper, there's always more. They start talking to Aaron about what happened the night before they went to bed. And he said Denise came over about 6. They had a bit of a disagreement. And the disagreement was about the fact that Denise found Aaron was texting his ex-fiancée, Andrea, trying to get back with her. Can we get back together? Can we see each other? Denise is not happy. But now they need to speak to Andrea because something's up. Well, then Andrea has to come down to the police department. And when she gets down there, she lets the police know that her and Aaron broke up on extremely bad terms. They were previously engaged and they broke it off because Andrea was cheating on Aaron and Aaron is completely devastated by the situation. And to make matters just a little worse, Aaron, Denise, and Andrea all work together. And when the police ask Andrea if she thinks that Aaron would want to get back with her, Andrea says yes. I absolutely think he would be open to the idea. So now Denise only wants Aaron talking to Andrea when they're at work and being done with it. Denise also works with Aaron and Andrea. Denise finds text of Aaron texting Andrea, wanting to work things out. Denise feels that Aaron is emotionally cheating, but Aaron says that he loves Denise and he's going to go to therapy and they're going to work it out and it's going to be great and they could start all over again. And now Denise is missing. And Detective Mustard is like, yeah, sorry, man. This is a far-fetched story. It's elaborate. There's a lot of details. Wetsuits, goggles, zip ties. As a matter of fact, I don't think she was kidnapped at all. I think you guys argued. I think you got upset. And I think something really bad happened. Your comforter and your blankets are missing. There is blood in your house. Maybe she overdosed. Maybe you guys were doing some extracurricular stuff and you panicked. And now you have to hide her. He goes, maybe you called out Andrea's name during relations. And she gets upset and then you get upset and that's it. Watching the footage of Aaron being interrogated for hours, he is so calm. And he's like, I did not do anything. So Aaron, to prove his innocence, takes a lie detector test and the FBI agent comes in and he sets him up and he sits him down and he takes the test. And then when he's done, the FBI agent pulls around his little chair and he looks at Aaron and he goes, there is no doubt in my mind that you failed this test. The FBI guy is like, you're a monster. You're a calculated, brutal, serial killing monster. And Aaron's like, I need a lawyer. And the FBI guy grabs him a box of tissues, puts it down on the table, packs up his little lie detector test, and walks out of the room. At this point, Aaron has been interrogated for 18 hours. Aaron gets a defense attorney. This defense attorney is amazing. I love this guy. If you watch this documentary, you're going to know why. He's so great. But he gets there and he says when he sees Aaron, he's pale, he's been crying, he's upset. He's done everything that he needs to do. He came down here, he called 911, he told you what he needed to tell you. You've been in his house. He's given you his fingerprints, he's given you his DNA, he's given you his clothes. And the lawyer's like, if you're not going to arrest him, he's out of here. He's coming with me. And the defense attorneys are like, this story is something. So they go over it again, and Aaron gives them the same exact story. And the defense lawyers are talking to each other, and they're like, do you believe him? I don't know. Do you believe him? I don't know. Sort of. Yeah, I believe him. I believe that this happened. But now they have a bigger issue. All this stuff with Andrea can be considered motive. And the defense attorneys have no idea what to think. They have this absolute, just wild off the wall story, and they have a duty to protect their client. They know that they have a ton of work ahead of them. And the defense attorney says, and I quote, I believe him with my whole heart, but nobody in freaking North America is going to believe this story. And it's true. It's true. It's so elaborate. There's so many details. But at this point, Denise has been missing for 28 hours and no one has any idea where she is. And her dad's like, you know what? That's enough. I'm going to Vallejo. I got to go find her. I got to go talk to the police. I have to do something. So he goes down to the police department and there's media and he does a little quick interview when he gets out of the car and he's crying. And he's like, Denise, wherever you are so strong. I believe in you. You're going to get through this and we're going to find you and you're going to come home. And while the media is like going crazy with the story and there was like, where's Denise Huskins? We meet a reporter named Henry Lee from the San Francisco Chronicle. And Henry Lee gets an unknown email. And it's an audio file that says, Denise Huskins. And all you hear is, hi, my name is Denise Huskins. I'm kidnapped. Otherwise, I'm fine. She's calm and she's just talking into the phone like nothing. And he's like, what the hell is this? So he brings it down to the Vallejo Police Department. And Mike Huskins, who's her dad, who's at the police department, is there and he can identify the audio file. And it is, in fact, Denise. She's alive. And Aaron's like, this is it. Let's go. Let's go find her. And the agent is like, I got some stuff I got to go catch up on. What? Detective Matt Mustard starts talking to the parents of Denise Huskins and asking them questions like there's something wrong with her. And her mother says, well, you know, when she was a child, she had some pretty bad things happen to her. She was assaulted. And Matt Mustard says that often women will do something again or pretend to have it happen again so they can relive the thrill of it. The thrill of it. Okay, just so we're all on the same page. And while that's happening, everybody is still interrogating Aaron. However, they are no longer looking at his involvement in it directly. No. Instead, they're focusing on his relationship with her. Does she think you have money? What is her personality like? Would she do something to get attention? If they had arguments, would she do something to try to get revenge, perhaps? And they start to suggest that maybe Denise Huskins was orchestrating this on purpose. And then, in another turn of events, we see camera footage of Denise Huskins walking calmly to her dad's house. Denise has been released. Who kidnapped her? Who paid the ransom? Why was she released in Huntington Beach, which is where she's from? That's where her parents live. They just dropped her off at her family's front door. Aaron says he really wants to talk to Denise. And the police are like, yeah, we really want to talk to her too. Vallejo PD holds another press release, but this time their tune is just a little different. And they say that they are no longer in contact with Miss Huskins. They can't believe the claims. They also go on to say Aaron and Denise have, and I quote, plundered valuable resources away from our community. And the police believe that this is just some wild, elaborate hoax. And to make matters even worse, because they're not bad enough, both Aaron and Denise could face criminal charges. And they are absolutely plastered in the media. And Denise Huskins has been dubbed the real-life Gone Girl. She was in the dark, in the trunk, with goggles, disoriented from the sedatives, zip ties. She's trying not to panic, and they tell her not to make any noise, and then they transfer her to a new car. She's trying to stay alert, but the drugs are working. She is just groggy and has no concept, really, of what's happening. She can tell, though, through the blacked out goggles that it is daylight, And when she gets out of the car, she can smell pine trees. But her kidnappers move her to a room. She can tell she's in a house, and they move her to a room. And he grabs her and he puts her on a bed and he sits down and he says, "This wasn't meant for you. This was meant for Aaron's ex, Andrea." And she's like, what the The kidnapper tells her that he is in a black market company that kidnaps people. The plan is to release her within the next 48 hours. She passes out from the sedatives and she wakes up to the sound of French pop music. When I think this documentary can't get any weirder, I'm like, what is happening? Her kidnapper, or one of her kidnappers, seems to be really nice. He takes her to the bathroom for regular bathroom breaks. He starts opening up to her. He tells her how he was in the military and how he has PTSD. And this gives her some sort of sense of hope that if she stays calm, that he will let her go. But then there's a knocking at the door. And he comes in and he says, "We have a bit of a problem. We don't have any collateral that you won't talk to the police. So one of us is going to have relations with you. And it will be recorded. And if you speak to the police, we'll release it." And the man who has previously been so kind to her told her it's going to have to be him. And so he does. And I have to tell you, this scene is so hard to watch. She's describing how she felt. She describes the disassociation. And she's crying, and my heart just breaks for her. And he takes her to the bathroom, and he tells her that she can take her goggles off when he's not around, and so she does. And she takes a shower, and she passes out from more sedatives, and then she wakes up, and she can hear that somebody's cleaning in the other room. And now, because she can take the goggles off, she's frantically trying to figure out how she's going to get out of this situation. But the windows are blocked. There's absolutely nothing in the bedroom that she can use. The door is locked from the outside, and she truly is trapped in this space. And the kidnapper comes to the room, and he knocks on the door, and she puts her goggles back on, and he says, "We've lost contact with Aaron." And he says that there are more people coming, and I have to give you more sedatives. And she can hear some muffled, heated conversation through the door. And that's when they decided that they needed to record a proof of life. And that is why Henry Lee got the audio file. And the reason that she sounded so calm in the audio file, we know now, is because of the sedatives. But there is another bombshell. His associates, or the other people that came to the house and were arguing with him, they say that the recording of her getting assaulted wasn't good enough. So they're going to have to do it again. This time, it needs to look consensual. Like we're in a relationship, like we're having an affair. And in her interview, she talks about how she could detach the first time. But this time, she's not going to be able to. She's going to have to pretend and perform and do absolutely what she needs to do to get out of this situation. And he leaves her with wine because it's a date, I guess. And he tells her that he's going to have to tape her eyes shut so that she can't see him, but that on the camera, it just looks like her eyes are closed. And so they record it again. And after that, she goes to sleep, and he wakes her up by knocking on the door, and he comes in and he says, "I want you to see something." And he shows her a video of her dad on the news, and she loses it. And this guy is trying to console her, which, gross. But then he says it's time to go home. So he gives her more sedatives, he puts her in the car, and he takes her to Huntington Beach. So she passes out in the car, and he wakes her up, and he says, "You cannot tell people that I was in the military. And you cannot tell people that we had sex. We will always be watching you, and we will come after your family." And then he gets her out of the car. He tells her to count to 10 until he leaves, and she's free to take the goggles off and go to her parents' house. But her dad isn't home at the time, so she goes to the neighbor's house, and she messages her dad, and her dad tells the police she's home. And the police come with a recorder, and the media just starts flooding in. And she was scared, but she tells them almost everything. Because when they ask her if she was assaulted, she said no. And the officer says, "We have Vallejo PD on the phone, and they are willing to offer you a proffer agreement." Well, what is a proffer agreement, you might ask? The agreement allows the defendant or witness to provide information to the prosecutor without the risk of information being used against them in court. The benefits? The defendant or witness may receive benefits such as a lighter sentence, leniency, or other advantages. And the documentary states that this is basically like immunity. And rightfully so. She goes, "Immunity from what?" And she's like, I think I need a lawyer. So she retains a lawyer. She goes to see him immediately. And the media is nuts about her while she's out because she's home. And at this point, the news nationwide is calling it a hoax. And Denise says that the last thing she was thinking about when she was living moment to moment was, I better make this believable. And she tells the lawyer absolutely everything, even about the assault. And the lawyer's like, you have to get a SART exam. Well, what is a SART exam? It is a medical exam that provides care and collects evidence to help prosecute an assault case. Now, not only is this violating her again, but remember, she's not supposed to be able to talk about it. And she tells the lawyer that if I tell anybody, he's going to come back and he's going to hurt my family. And the lawyer's like, you cannot let them win. That's what they do. If you don't go through with this and you don't persevere and you don't move forward, they win. And very bravely, she's like, fine, I'll get the exam. I'll tell them everything. So they call the Vallejo PD. They say that she needs to get a SART exam. And Vallejo PD says she needs to give us a statement first and then she'll get a SART exam, which I don't know. Maybe we should provide medical care first. But she still goes and she still tells them everything, which is incredibly brave. And however, the media is doing what the media does, and it blasts her all over TV, not caring if she was in danger, because everybody just has to be the first person to get the story out. They report that she is at the Vallejo PD with her lawyer. And they sit her down in an interrogation room with an FBI agent and Detective Mustard. Again, and he says that he needs the truth after the press release that police department called her a liar. Mustard said he wants to know about her and Aaron and the details of what happened that night, and she gives him the same exact details that Aaron does. I don't know why I said it like that. Details. Lasers, tasers, goggles, zip ties, headphones, music, instructions. She speaks about how the man held her captive, about how he tells her that he was a veteran, about how he has PTSD and insomnia. And then she gets to the assault in detail. And they take this victim and they ask questions like, have you ever been in that trunk before? Why didn't you fight back? Now I have a couple side notes about this conversation. Number one, why is there no female advocate in this room dealing with a female victim? Number one. Number two, a man asking that question, did you fight back, to a woman is so disgusting. Because in a case of assault, a lot of times the perpetrator is going to do it anyways, whether you fight or you don't. And I can say from personal experience that sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get yourself out of a harmful situation. It doesn't make it any less assault. And I think that's why it would be so important to have a female in the room who understands these things. And now they're looking at her like she's a criminal. The next day they interview her again, and she says that the FBI agent tells her that there's a lot of inconsistencies with her story. Do you want to change anything? It's a federal crime to lie to an agent. And her lawyer pulls this guy out of the room and he's like, listen, there are zero inconsistencies. Zero. She's told you the story the same way, the same time. Her story is exactly the same as Aaron's. She's done everything that she needs to do. And the cops are like, whoa, have you seen Gone Girl? I hate this story so much. And just know that if Denise is prosecuted for lying, she could be facing a year to 18 months in federal prison. Aaron and Denise at this point decide that they need to reunite, but Denise is really scared because she thinks that Aaron's going to look at her differently because of everything that happened. And she sees him and they're crying and she just says, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And Aaron doesn't even say anything about it. He doesn't look at her differently. He understands that she's a victim. But now they're together and they're still scared because the police are doing absolutely nothing to find these kidnappers. And the media has gone on to publish their stories about Denise Huskins, the real life Gone Girl, and the boyfriend who was in on it, or maybe he wasn't in on it and she did it by herself, whatever. The firestorm has now fizzled out and the media is on to the next thing because that's what they do. But our reporter, Henry Lee, gets an email notification from an unknown sender. The subject, Denise Huskins kidnapping. And it says, we kidnapped Denise Huskins for ransom, and they send photos. They are confessing, and they are upset that the media has called Denise a liar. He said this was not a hoax. So Henry's like, oh shit. And he takes this email and he sends it to Vallejo PD. And you know what they do? That's right. Nothing. Must be very busy, I guess. So the lawyers get this email and they talk about the pictures that they get. They get pictures of the room. They get pictures of a toy gun with like a laser on it. They get a picture of a white Mustang. And Denise said that when she was transferred from one car to another, that engine sounded very heavy, like a Mustang. More emails are pouring in from this unknown sender. And the police, say it with me, folks, nothing. There should be like a little sparkle right there. Just nothing. The kidnappers are wildly upset. They keep sending emails. They're like, we're acquaintances, we're college graduates. But they also say that if the Vallejo PD does not apologize to Denise and Aaron, we will do it again. Which I have to say, this might be the most inconsiderate group of kidnappers I've ever seen. Like, yes, they victimized Denise Huskins, but also they want the PD to apologize to her. Like, I don't know what to think. 10 weeks after Denise's kidnapping in Dublin, California, 40 miles away from Vallejo, there is another break-in. A woman on 911 hiding in a bathroom. Her husband is fighting a man in their house, and the man is trying to get at their daughter. The police go down there. It's a home invasion robbery. The husband is covered in blood. The daughter is safe, and the suspect ran. And in the yard, they find zip ties and duct tape. And the daughter says, I think he left a phone behind. So they find out which carrier like the phone belongs to and what account it's under. And they call the number, and it's a woman. She picks up the phone and she's like, hello. And they were like, hi, we need to know whose phone this is, X, Y, and Z. And she's like, oh my God, that's my son Matthew's phone. And they were like, oh, okay. Well, what can you tell us about Matthew? And we know now that this is Matthew Muller, a former Marine, a Harvard Law College graduate. And he also has previous reports of being a suspect in sexual batteries and attempted R words. And Matthew Muller's mom says that he's staying in a cabin in South Lake Tahoe, which is 40 miles away from them. And they move out right away. They're like, we're going. They move in silence. They bust into the house. They're yelling, search warrant, search warrant. It's very just crazy and wild, and they're clearing rooms, and they get to Muller and they handcuff him, and he's quiet and he's composed. And one of the detectives says that the house is a complete mess. It smells what she says is stale, but the house is in the woods, in the middle of pine trees. And if you go back to the beginning, you remember that Denise said that she remembers being daylight and she could smell pine. They find zip ties, duct tape, toy guns, lasers, windows are covered, NyQuil, syringes, a white Mustang. The GPS has different addresses programmed into it. And there is a blow-up doll in the trunk, dressed in all black. They find blacked out goggles, and attached to the goggles is a long blonde hair. Now it's June of 2015. Denise is living in fear of kidnappers, fear of being prosecuted. They're getting online harassment, which I will never understand. And she continues to get victimized over and over and over again. And the police are working diligently at doing nothing. Just in case you were wondering what they were doing, it's still nothing. But they have a lead case agent, David Sesma. And just when you think there couldn't be any more turns of events, who is David Sesma? Well, he's a man that used to date Andrea, Aaron's ex-fiance, who also happens to be the original target of this whole thing. Why is he here, you ask? I also asked the same thing. So Denise's lawyer writes to the Office of the Inspector General about how this should not be allowed. And they respond, the appropriate authorities found his conduct unproblematic. The Dublin PD starts searching for anything they can about the blonde hair that's found in the goggles. And we meet Misty Carousel, who's a detective there. And she starts going through Matthew Muller's background, and she sees that he's connected to a case in Palo Alto. And that was 40 miles away in 2009. So she picks up the phone and she calls a detective, and she's like, yeah, I have a Matthew Muller here. And the detective's like, I'm going to stop you right there. I have a photo of him on my desk that I've been looking at since 2009. He was a person of interest. I just could not prove it. But in that story, the female was restrained, blindfolded, all black clothing, NyQuil, surgical tape over her eyes, tells her he's going to assault her, but she says that she's been a victim to assault before, and he says, I don't want to victimize you again, and leaves. Which, how is it? You'd rather victimize her a first time? Misty says that her friend was a victim of assault, which is why she became a police officer in the first place. And she understands this case like no one else. And this again brings me to why was there no female advocate in the room when Denise was talking to the police officers? Then we find out about another story. In 2009, a girl named Tracy, 8 miles from Palo Alto, and she was in her 30s. She's living alone. It's 4:30 a.m. and she wakes up to pressure on top of her. And she was screaming, but he knew her name. And he said, Tracy, if you don't calm down, I'll have to gag you. And there are zip ties. He made her drink something that made her sleepy. He blindfolded her with swim goggles that were blacked out. And then he tells her that he has to assault her. And she starts pleading with him and bargaining with him. And you don't have to do this. And please don't do this. And he ends up saying, I can't do this. I'm sorry. And he sits down and he talks to her and he says, this is going to mess you up for a while. Maybe you should get a dog for protection. What? But there's a problem. Tracy has long brown hair. And the police end up going to Tracy's boyfriend, and they ask him if she was an attention seeker, if maybe she could make this up. They ask Tracy, maybe you had a bad dream. Oh, how I love being a woman. Denise then opens up about how this is not the first time that she has been assaulted, and it's not the first time that she's gone to the police. She tried to report an incident when she was 19, but the police talked her out of it because it was a he said, she said, and there's no way you could prove it. And here she is, taken and violated again and again. So Misty Carousel, the detective, keeps searching and she looks into the Mustang. She calls the original owner and he says, have you heard of the Mare Island Creeper? In 2014, there were a bunch of students who were being harassed by a male subject taking pictures in their windows, and the police didn't do anything, so the students did something. They followed the man home. They find out that he's ex-military and he lives close to them, and he's a lawyer. They take all of their evidence, they bring it to the police department, and the police do what? Say it with me, friends. Nothing. Then, as she's talking to the man on the phone about the white Mustang, he says, have you heard of the Gone Girl case? And she's like, what are you talking about? So she looks it up. And what comes up? A picture of Denise Huskins. And what is Denise? Blonde. And the Mustang had programmed in Huntington Beach, which is Denise's hometown. Boom. Done. Right? Ring, ring. Hello? Vallejo PD? Hello? And she said, I'm calling like an ex-girlfriend. It made me laugh. And she's calling and she's calling and she's calling. And finally, she gets a detective that says, yeah, we're not looking into it anymore. The FBI took it over. Sorry, call them. What? But they set up a meeting with the FBI with all the evidence and they find similarities with the stuff that was emailed to the reporters. The toy gun, the lasers, the swim goggles, the NyQuil, the laser pointers, the tasers, the phasers. And the police say that the FBI look at this evidence and they're like, shit. They know that they messed up, which would I would have given to be a fly on the wall with that one. So Denise's lawyer gets a call that says we might have a break in the case. And there is evidence that they have someone in custody with evidence that might be linked to Aaron and Denise. And the media starts again.
Whoops, JK. This wasn't a hoax. So sorry, we ruined your lives.
And the media puts out the suspect's picture, and Denise sees his picture for the first time. But it's when she sees video footage of him and the way that he spoke, and she knew it was him. Denise and Aaron are sitting on an interview couch with Netflix, and they have the affidavit. And an affidavit is a document that law enforcement puts together basically of the work that they did in a case. And when they read it, even law enforcement wrote basically that they did, repeat it with me, folks, nothing. And the affidavit proves that their sights were set on Aaron and Denise the entire time. They talk about Aaron's polygraph test. He was told by the FBI agent that he had failed miserably and that he knows that Aaron did this. But the affidavit says that the results were inconclusive. I've always said that if I was innocent, I would absolutely take a polygraph test. I'm like, yeah, I have nothing to hide. But now, after watching this, I'm not sure I would take one because it doesn't matter if it's inconclusive. The police could just be like, yeah, you're lying. You failed it. You can lie to me, but if I lie to you, it's a federal offense. My mother-in-law and I were talking about this, and she's like, they need tools because they're dealing with criminals. And I'm like, I know, but yuck. There's also a section that they talk about the SART exam. And they say, and I quote, there was no sign of non-consensual sex. But just because there was no trauma does not mean that it was non-consensual. Again, why did a female victim not have a female advocate of some sort? In the affidavit, they also wrote that Aaron said that the kidnappers were going to contact him on his phone. But you know what they did? I know you're going to say nothing, but that's not the answer. They actually did something. They put his phone on airplane mode. That's what they did. And then when they took it off airplane mode, they realized that they had 2 calls come in from a traceable number that was only 200 meters away from where they were. And Denise says that had they had his phone on, they could have saved her from the second assault. The FBI says Mueller acted alone and they aren't looking for anyone else because why would they? And Denise and Aaron are very upset because they knew in their hearts that there were more people there. I wonder if that has anything to do with the blow-up doll. Denise says that she heard voices in the house. But Aaron and Denise get in front of the media and hold a press conference proving her story. And Henry Lee, the reporter that's in this documentary, says that he regrets anything that he had to do with this. And she was finally being validated. Matthew Mueller pled guilty and Denise finally saw him face to face. And she is so unbelievably strong. And she stood there and she looked at him and she's like, you are going to look at me eye to eye. I'm not just a body. Matthew Mueller was sentenced to a total of 40 years of kidnap, robbery, and assault. He was not charged in any of the other incidences. Denise and Aaron sue the city of Vallejo for defamation. None of the officers were disciplined for their actions in this case. No. Even when Matt Mustard is on camera and says, okay, so I start to figure out how do I make it so that you look like a monster. In 2015, he was awarded Officer of the Year. I know you are so happy right now. Denise and Aaron settled for $2.5 million, which is not nearly what the city of Vallejo owes them. And in 2017, Misty Carousel meets Denise and Aaron. And it was super emotional. I cried a little bit. And Denise told her, you're our hero. She wanted somebody to be able to call her hero during this whole thing. And it was Misty. And if Misty didn't do her job like no one else did, what could have happened to Aaron and Denise? Aaron and Denise got married. They had 2 baby girls and they are a happy little family. And I just thought the ending of that was so beautiful. But what is the takeaway? The case of Aaron Quinn and Denise Huskins reminds us of the power of resilience in the face of trauma and the importance of not jumping to conclusions based on stereotypes or media narratives. They endured both the terror of a real-life kidnapping and the pain of being accused of lying by those who were supposed to protect them. Their experience serves as a cautionary tale for law enforcement and society about the dangers of victim blaming and the need for a more empathetic and thorough approach to investigations. Ultimately, Aaron and Denise's courage in seeking justice helped shine a light on flaws in the system, emphasizing that victims deserve to be heard and believed as they work through unimaginable hardships. Let me know your thoughts down below. My name is Bacon Bears, and that's my opinion.